Swedish Potatoes. That's not their name, it's Swedish pancakes, but the slip-up always comes to mind. In between each bit of milk, egg, and flour is the memory of my sister on Christmas morning, exclaiming how much she loved Swedish potatoes as she drowned hers in a simple amount of syrup. I'm glad she adores them in the way she does, though. It helps our family keep a bit of Great Grandma Ida alive on our holiday celebrations and other gatherings. Sometimes, as my dad shakes and flips the batter with our cast iron pan, he'll reminisce on the story about how Great Grandma Ida made these every day for him and his roommates when they lived next door after college. Mom always rolls her eyes at this, but it was her who was adamant that we conserved as many of Grandma Ida's recipes, written in her own hand, as possible. Now I, with the most inexperienced hand God has ever gifted creation with, am attempting to carry this legacy on and into a new generation. Already, the recipe has been impacted by and now reflects our assimilated American values, as the traditional lingonberry jam has been pushed aside in favor of butter, sugary maple syrup, and at times even peanut butter for a few in my family. However, the recipe's core remains largely unchanged, even if it has been lost in my great-grandmother's pen. So, I read from my Aunt Angie's handwriting as I begin, and then follow by scooping out 1.5 cups of flour, and it flutters into the mixing bowl. The powder reminds me of the snow outside the window that crisp December morning, and how so much has happened since then. My cousin Junia has followed her path to Costa Rica for studying, and she has not seen such snow in over 2 years. She was able to visit us this year, and we celebrated with a nice hot platter of Swedish pancakes. And even though the joke on their name is pushing a decade in age, she laughs at it, as if hearing it for the very first time. I spoke with Junia, who has now returned to Costa Rica, and she told me that the dish served as a reminder of home, one that keeps her going in a new environment with so much unknown around her. Eggs are the second addition into the mixture. 3 of them crack on the edge of the stove, and I try not to add any shell to the mix as they spill their yolks into a bowl. Before adding them, they must be whisked on their own, and doing so invokes a perception of energy, similar to that of that Christmas's so-called snowball fight we had in the basement, with white bean bags after the plates of pancakes had been licked clean. We then add the eggs and whisk them again, which is the easiest part unless you forget to lock the bowl into place, like I did when my sister attempted to teach me how to bake a cake a few years back. At last, we must pour in 3 cups of whole milk, or real milk as my dad jabs at me. Seeing the liquid splash into the mixing bowl and completing the batter returns me to those Swedish potatoes once more. My sisters punch on my arm, and my cousins Naomi and Junia catching their laughter as to not blow water from their noses. Whisking the mixture, again, into one cohesive piece gives me a thought on how odd it is that 3 simple ingredients could create a lifetime of Christmas memories and an unlimited amount of stale jokes among those at the table. But I like that thought. The final step in the recipe is to cook the batter on a stovetop with assistance from our cast iron pans. This is the special portion of the process, as the pan keeps the mixture thin and light as it bakes, much like the mood when those Swedish potatoes find themselves on the family dinner table. The cast iron keeps the pancake from sticking to the edges, allowing us to flip it. We still have the very pan Great Grandma Ida used when she whipped up batches for my dad, his friends, and my aunt when they were my age. It's one of the numerous little artifacts from her time left for us. Everyone who has learned how to make Swedish pancakes in my family has at least once practiced with the help of that pan. It's very similar to some sort of rite of passage in terms of baking flatbread. By far, this is not the only recipe left on this mortal plane by Grandma Ida. Her handwriting is scrawled across a multitude of parchment shavings that keep her love with the family even all these years later. Our continued use of this recipe, as well as our alterations to it, have worked to make my family who we are today. It ties our Swedish-American heritage together and into our reality. It has formed us into who we are today and will link us to who those will come after. Of course, I don't think of any of this as my sister gets tongue-tied that Christmas morning, but it is there all the same, right on my plate, waiting to be asked its story.